Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. No, I'm not going to do that. It's not Pete Graves. Yes, we're all bored. Well done, Pete. You're on a sabbatical in Florida or wherever you are and loving life. But this is a special episode of the Transfer Talk podcast with me, Dharmesh Sheth, because the last one we recorded, it kind of got dated very, very quickly because of a certain move for Eberechi Eze. It was all set for Tottenham Hotspur, and now it's all set for Arsenal. Delighted to say ESPN Sam Tighe joins me. Hello there, Sam.
Hello, my friend. Quiet one?
Yeah, could say that. Later, I'm joined by Sky Sports News reporter Michael Bridge. But Sam, let's get straight into this. Was this one of those we'll look back on and think, oh, I remember where I was when I heard that Arsenal had hijacked the Eze deal?
I think so, yeah. And somewhat fittingly, I was sat on my sofa watching Stranger Things. I'm doing a big rewatch ahead of the final season that's coming at the end of this year. And that's quite fitting, isn't it, for one of the most prominent transfer hijackings that we will probably ever see. These are very rare. These are very exciting. They're pretty heartbreaking if you're on the wrong end of it. But that's why we're here to discuss it, because this is big, big news.
I know people in football will say, oh, nothing surprises me in football. And they say it in that kind of voice as well. But did this one catch you off guard?
Big time. Yeah, I mean, come on. Like, there are many elements to it, and we'll get into it all. But just the very fact that it's all been so public and it was also fast, and it's between these two clubs as well. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, look, let's just get into how this deal materialised, because this wasn't one of those ones where Arsenal just came in the last couple of days and got the deal done. Look, there is an element of that in there, but there's been a long-standing interest in Eberechi Eze from Arsenal, as there has been admittedly from Tottenham Hotspur as well. But you've also got to remember there's history. He's a boyhood Arsenal fan. He was in the youth ranks at Arsenal before not making it there and got moved on when he was 13 years old. Now, as far as this transfer window is concerned, Sam, I was told this interest was there from June. They made initial contacts in June. They explored the conditions of a deal in June. I was then told by certain sources that, look, the interest is there, but it's going to go quiet for a little while because Arsenal have got priorities in other areas. They wanted to get various deals done, like Zubimendi, chasing Gyökeres. They didn't know how long that was going to take, and other deals as well, including Noni Madueke, among others. There was also the issue of the Ethan Nwaneri contract, because there was a real feeling that one could have gone the other way for Arsenal. At the end of the final year, there was interest from clubs, particularly Borussia Dortmund, but they managed to get that deal over the line as well. Then I was told it will be revisited later in the window. But then the Spurs interest emerged, and it felt like Arsenal had cooled their interest totally, and he was going to go to Spurs. Spurs agree a deal. Then there's an injury, and we still don't know how long he's going to be out for, to Kai Havertz. And then Arsenal felt that they needed reinforcements in that attacking area. That's bad news for Tottenham Hotspur, obviously. So Tottenham Hotspur agree a deal with Crystal Palace. They work hard to agree that deal. And I know a lot of Spurs fans are saying, well, how come it took so long for Spurs to do that deal and Arsenal to agree? Because all Arsenal had to do was to match the Tottenham Hotspur deal if they were going to go for Eze, which is what they did. I think Tottenham Hotspur, they were even looking at trying to get Richarlison to Crystal Palace in order to get Eze to Tottenham Hotspur, free up a striking space, and then maybe rival Newcastle United for Yohan Wissa. But once Arsenal came back in, £60 million plus £7.5 million in performance-related add-ons, Eze's mind was made up, personal terms agreed, but it should be said a lot of that work was done in those initial explorations of the conditions of a deal back in June. So that's where we stood with that deal, and as we record this, he's due to have a medical and he will join Arsenal unless we get another huge twist, which this time we are not expecting. Sam, you touched on it at the start there, but when was the last time you saw a transfer that caused such a huge stir as this one?
Yeah, I mean, to hit these kind of headlines and to be this kind of gripping and this exciting. It is tough. I mean, I'm thinking back to some of the biggest deals that we've ever seen here. Like, this is the kind of stir that's caused by anything that costs 100 million or more. It's the kind of stir that is caused by other similar gazumpings, if we'll call them that. So if you cast your mind back to, unfortunately for Spurs again, it's Willian and how he arrived at a London airport one day with the intent to sign for Spurs and seemed to whisk off in a car in a different direction and ended up signing for Chelsea. That's probably quite similar. I think I'm getting a bit of a Man City's first massive signing Robinho vibe off this in terms of buzz and excitement. And maybe even something akin to when genuinely Cristiano Ronaldo left Manchester United for Real Madrid. I mean, you can usually tell what kind of impact, what kind of an earthquake has been set by these deals by how many of your very casual football fans and friends are blowing up your WhatsApp and going, wait, what's happening? And this is certainly, it's registering on the Richter scale, let's put it that way.
You mentioned Cristiano Ronaldo. This kind of reminds me of when he returned to Manchester United as well. The amount of the stir that caused, as you mentioned, the WhatsApp messaging was blowing up. But there you had a situation where everyone expected him to go to Manchester City, if you remember. And then there was the interest from Manchester United, and United ended up getting him. So you've got a situation here where everyone was expecting him to go to Tottenham Hotspur, and then their biggest rivals, Arsenal, are the ones who end up getting him.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, when he was negotiating and getting closer to Spurs, I struggled to believe it because I just, in my head, Eberechi Eze was going to Arsenal this summer. They did all that groundwork in June. We talked about it quite extensively early in the summer. We knew the release clause, we knew the price, everyone knew all the conditions of all the terms of the deal. And it just kind of felt like Eze would end up at Arsenal. So for then to basically let that cool off to the point where Spurs were going to nip in, it genuinely felt really strange. Like I couldn't wrap my head around it. So there's one part of my brain here, and I have no horse in this race, but I'm quite relieved that Eze's actually going to Arsenal because it makes more sense in my head than Eze going to Spurs. It just, like, if I just seen Eze holding that Spurs shirt after what we saw over the course of the first part of the summer, I just think I'd struggle to get my head around it. So this at least makes a bit more sense.
Yeah, I mean, you're struggling to get your head around it. I think the Tottenham Hotspur fans are definitely struggling to get their heads around it. As I mentioned before, we'll hear from my colleague at Sky Sports News, Michael Bridge, a little later on. But I want to get your view on the Tottenham Hotspur side, Sam, because they're not happy, the fans. It's only going to further increase the anger of those Spurs fans towards Daniel Levy and ENIC, isn't it?
I guess so, yeah. I mean, look, there's a lot of accusations flying around right now. There's a lot of anger. Frankly, I'm not close enough to the situation, to the deal, or to the fan base, the situation, to really recognise what's right and wrong about what's been flying around. But what I will say is, from the outside looking in, Spurs do frequently struggle to get deals over the line in a very frustrating way. The fact that we can name at least two other situations where Spurs have been publicly gazumped and had their terms stolen off them. So Willian is one of them. And Luis Diaz was another. I mean, when he went to Liverpool 2.5 years ago, Spurs had the deal agreed and Liverpool copy and pasted the terms and said, thanks very much, that looks pretty good, we'll take that off you. It's a very frustrating existence sometimes. And it, publicly speaking, it always seems to be Spurs. So it's that why always me, woe is me situation. And I feel for the fans there. But is it me, or do the club just seem to be quite slow to do their work? And are they perhaps guilty sometimes of zeroing in on one target too specifically rather than spreading the net a little bit more widely to 5 or 10 ideas? Because, Dharms, they tried to get Morgan Gibbs-White. That was a relatively unprecedented situation in which they failed to get him. I'm not bashing them for that. That's very weird. But they didn't get him. Morgan Gibbs-White signed his new contract at Nottingham Forest on July the 26th. Shortly after, James Maddison tore his ACL, and we are now on August the 22nd, and Spurs have been fiddling around on a deal for Eze for the last 3-4 days, are going to lose out on him. It seems to me like they react quite slowly to things, and there'll be a bit of jealousy at play here because, contrastingly, and because it's Arsenal have suffered an injury to Kai Havertz, and within 2 days have signed Eberechi Eze. Now that is fast. I appreciate they already had the conditions sorted, but they've just it's decisive process, and it's what Spurs seem to lack, and that's frustrating.
And what I would say, look, I'm not disagreeing with anything you said. That's all fair. If I was to do it from Tottenham Hotspur's side on a couple of things that you've said there. First of all, the Luis Diaz situation. Liverpool were in the driving seat initially because they said, we'll bring you in next summer. And it was only when Tottenham Hotspur went in January that they had to put forward their plans, because Porto had kind of had an agreement with Liverpool for that summer, and they were almost duty bound to tell Liverpool, look, we've accepted Tottenham Hotspur's bid because they want to do that deal now.
Yeah.
And clearly Porto wanted to get some money in at that stage of the season. So I think that one, yeah, you could say maybe, but I think a little bit unfair towards Spurs with Luis Diaz, only because I think he was always going to go to Liverpool. It was just a timing thing.
Okay.
What I would say about the Eze deal with Tottenham Hotspur as well, I know that a lot of the Tottenham Hotspur fans are angry because they felt that they could have acted quicker, but we should also remember that they did actually agree a deal with Crystal Palace for Eberechi Eze. So they did get the agreement done. It's only when Arsenal came in, then it's the will of the player. And the will of the player, if those two clubs had agreed a deal, was always going to be Arsenal for all of the reasons that we've mentioned before, because of what had happened earlier on in this transfer window, and maybe historically as well. Maybe a bit of unfinished business for Eze himself to play for his boyhood club, but also a bit of a fairy tale ending for him, I suppose. You know, gets to Arsenal at a young age, wants to make it at Arsenal, gets turned away, and then, 14 odd years later, here I am again, bigger and better.
I understand that Spurs did thrash out the deal for Eze. I think the frustration there is that if Gibbs White signs his new contract 20 days before the season starts, and it's not until the season starts and actually Arsenal play Man United that Kai Havertz picks up an injury, that's basically quite a long time, right? That's 2 weeks, it's 20 days, it's whatever it might be for Spurs to sort this out. And they just let it go on a little bit too long and allowed a situation maybe where another party could come in if they needed to. I appreciate the catalyst is Arsenal having to step in because of Kai Havertz, but if Spurs had sorted this out before August started, then none of this would actually happen. That's the feeling I'm getting from Spurs fans, and that's the frustration I'm getting.
Yeah, I think frustration is an understatement at the moment, Sam. Just on the fee itself, we mentioned it before. It's a guaranteed £60 million plus a further £7.5 million in performance-related add-ons. So it's more or less what the release clause was. I'm guessing we're not privy to the actual conditions and the payment terms, but I'm sure that there will have been some discussion over how this fee would be paid, and maybe is it different to how the release clause was set out, or is it the same? But look, it is basically a figure that Crystal Palace had put in a release clause and that Eberechi Eze had agreed to, even though that release clause expired the day before the season started. Who's got a good deal here? Arsenal or Palace or both?
Well, look, from Palace's perspective, it is, if these add-ons are met, and I don't know how achievable they are, Dharmesh, to use the buzzword of the summer. Achievable add-ons, difficult to achieve add-ons, I don't know. But let's say they're reasonable. We're going to get to £67.5 million here. That is by a distance a club record sale for Crystal Palace. Michael Olise went for 50 million last summer. Wan-Bissaka cost about the same several years ago, but we're whacking another 17.5 million, on top of this. It's big money. It's big money. And you mentioned it being a bit of a storybook ending for Eze in terms of rocking back up at his boyhood club, and bit of a storybook ending for Palace too. You know, scores the winning goal in an FA Cup final. Also, to note, scored in the quarter-final and the semi-final. He was Mr. Decisive in this run. Wins the Community Shield and departs for a huge amount of money. I mean, it's great stuff from Palace's perspective. You couldn't write it any better. And from Arsenal's perspective, well, you know me, Dums. I'm never going to change. I'm always going to sit here and say, well, it's probably about £10 million too much, because that's basically my personal brand at this point. But I do kind of feel that's the situation. We look at these Premier League wingers moving clubs all summer. We look at the benchmarking fees. Eze has ended up towards the top end of that bracket, along with Cunha and Mbeumo. and he's 27 years of age. And a lot of the 23-year-olds are moving for a little bit less, and they've got a bit more resale value, a bit of a longer tail in terms of a career. So I don't know. I think it's probably a tiny bit high, but you have to like establish and respect the fact that this is not a normal situation. Like, they are reacting to an injury. There is a little bit of panic happening here from Arsenal. You are going to pay a little bit more than you want to in that situation.
Well, it looks like it's going to happen now. Anyway, Eberechi Eze to Arsenal. So let's talk about the kind of impact he can have at the club, Sam. First of all, does he start for Arsenal?
Well, I think there's only about, 5 maybe like guaranteed starters for Arsenal these days, which is how it should be. You need good competition in the squad. You got a lot of games to get through, and you need a stacked squad of players. I think nothing spells that out more than them spending 48 million rising into the mid-50s for Noni Madueke, whose best position is Bukayo Saka's position. Arsenal were taking squad depth and quality very, very seriously here. So Eze cannot step into this situation and expect to be an every-week starter. But he offers something very pleasingly different to the other left wingers they have. And that means that for some games, Arteta will say, Eze's my guy. And for others, he'll say, I think I prefer Martinelli here. So that's a healthy situation to be in. And yes, of course, he's good enough to play a substantial number of games for the club, even if he's not a guaranteed starter like Saka.
Yeah, you focused on Martinelli there and that particular position. Is that his best position, or maybe more central?
So interestingly, for Glasner, he has played somewhere in the middle of the two, right? Like he's played as the wide 10 that we talk about a lot with Burmo and Cunha in Amorim's system at Manchester United. Glasner uses the same front three shape. So Eze has played kind of left winger, kind of 10 for the last couple of years, and he's been superb at it. But before Glasner, he played left wing, he played a bit of number 8, attacking number 8, a bit of number 10. At QPR, he was a brilliant left winger, proper left winger. I just think he's going to end up in those general areas of the pitch. He's played three positions to a very high standard. I expect to see him more often than not on the left. But again, all summer I've been asking the question, Darms, are Arsenal going to take the situation with Martin Ødegaard seriously? Can you ask him to play every single game? Or are you going to make sure that you have a bit of creative juice outside of him? Eze solves that problem, even to the point where if Ødegaard needed to step out and Eze needed to play as an attacking number 8 in a 4-3-3, I think he can do it. I've literally seen him do it for Palace. So more often on the left, but with a really pleasing amount of positional versatility that I don't know if you've noticed, but Arteta doesn't really seem to sign players unless they can play 2 or 3 positions outside of the absolute specialists like a Gyökeres or a goalkeeper.
Listen, it's obviously been the biggest talking point of the week, maybe even the window, though you could argue Alexander Isak can compete with that. What a lot of people are saying when I'm listening on the radio and when I'm watching the pundits and the experts on TV, the kind of buzz phrase here is Mikel Arteta now has no excuse. He has to win the Premier League title. For me, I think it's a little bit disrespectful to teams like Liverpool and Manchester City because they're going to obviously have a say among other teams as well. It's clearly going to help Arsenal's title ambitions this season having Eberechi Eze in that squad. Does it make them favourites for you?
Right, so this is a bit of a difficult question, and it's a loaded question, I think, towards Arteta at points, as you kind of suggest there. I think it's not just about what Arsenal do, it's about what the other Titans do too, and Liverpool and City have reloaded pretty aggressively. My before a ball was kicked pre-season prediction, I put Liverpool to win the title, but to tell you the truth, I didn't really believe in it, because what I've seen from them over the first couple of weeks has not been particularly good. There's a lot of change happening in that team, and they've clearly got a lot to get to grips with. And I think it opens the door for a team like Arsenal fully to step in here. But they still need a lot to go right. Eze needs to click. Gyökeres needs to adapt and score goals. It's not as simple as you have all these players now, let's go and do it. Liverpool's opening 2 performances tell you that just because you have really good players doesn't mean you play well. So it's a bit of a cowardly answer. We have to wait and see. But Arsenal, I think, in adding Eze, they actually do finally have enough firepower to make a proper fist of this. Whereas before adding him, I really wasn't convinced that they had enough goals and enough creativity in the team to genuinely go the distance.
Yeah, so Eze on his way, adds to Kepa, Mosquera, Norgard, Madueke, Zubamendi, and Gyökeres as well.
Big summer.
I think it's a big window, isn't it? I think the rest of this transfer window will be focused on sales for Arsenal. Alexander Zinchenko, Fabio Vieira, Reece Nelson, Jakob Kivior, Albert Sambi Lokonga. They will listen to suitable offers for all of those. But look, as we promised you right at the top of the show, I'm delighted to say that we're now joined by my colleague, Michael Bridge. Michael, great to see you. I know you've been talking until you're blue about this deal on Sky Sports News over this week. Myself and Sam have been speculating on what the mood would be inside Tottenham Hotspur. So give us your insight. What is the mood like there just now?
When from a fan's perspective, it's huge disappointment, a tinge of embarrassment because it's to Tottenham's biggest rivals. And I have to say, there's quite a bit of anger as well. Obviously, everything is now on social media. Goodness knows what social media would have been like when Sol Campbell joined Arsenal from Spurs, and on that day, probably the biggest, most controversial move in Premier League history. But this one hurts because Spurs should have got this done a while ago. Okay, negotiations take time. Daniel Levy and Steve Parish, I get it, but to Spurs supporters, it looks like Arsenal have just gone and got it done. But obviously what Arsenal have done is they've matched what Tottenham have offered, and he's chosen Arsenal. That's not a problem. That's absolutely fine. But I think the anger is really that if Spurs fans feel this could have got done earlier. James Maddison got injured 3 to 4 weeks ago. Kai Havertz got injured 2 to 3 days ago.
Michael, why didn't Spurs just pay the release fee before it expired?
Those words, release clause, that is the worst 2 words for Spurs this transfer window. Obviously, we've got the Morgan Gibbs-White situation as well. I think if you look at it, what are Arsenal paying out? What is it, about sort of 60 million with 7 million in add-ons, which will probably be achievable. I think looking at it now, I just feel Spurs will get a number 10 because they have to. They will get one, but will they overpay? Will they pay 5-6 million more than they should? And then people will say, why didn't they just do that for Eze? So, look, we don't know the absolute intricate details. Only Daniel Levy will know that, the final details. But, from what I'm told, Spurs were happy with what they did. They thought they did everything. They thought they had. They know they had an agreement with the club. They thought they had an agreement with the player. But they just view it as he's chosen the club he supported as a boy, and that's how they see it. But I don't think the fans feel that at the moment.
So what's next then? Who are Tottenham's other targets? Where are they going to turn?
Well, I don't think they'll turn to anyone in the Premier League. They like Monaco's Magnus Agliuc. He's got a wonderful left foot. He's a number 10. Spoke to someone who watches a lot of French football. He says he drops deep a lot, which is what really Thomas Frank wants more in a number 10. If you look at it, he wanted Morgan Gibbs-White and before Eze. Morgan Gibbs-White and Eze are 2 completely different players. So I'm intrigued to see who they go for. As I say, they will get someone because they have to. But I don't think they'll now be shopping in the Premier League.
I mean, it was a wild week, wasn't it, Michael? There was also that talk that Tottenham Hotspur were considering a deal whereby Richarlison would be part of the deal that brought Eze to Tottenham Hotspur, freeing up some space to try and get Yohan Wissa from Brentford. It sounded a really convoluted and almost impossible looking deal because you're looking at 3 different players required to go to 3 different clubs. And if one doesn't want to go, then that kind of move falls through. There's clearly an interest in Yohan Wissa. Is there still a chance that Tottenham Hotspur will go for him with or without Richarlison leaving the club?
It sounds like a complicated house move, doesn't it? I mean, it's... Look, I've been quite consistent on this all summer. I don't think Spurs will sign Yohan Wissa for a couple of reasons, and I think one of the main reasons is because I think he's very far down the line with Newcastle United. They're not down the line in terms of a fee, but I just think his mind and heart is there already. I don't think Thomas Frank wants to overly upset Brentford either. He's never been the top target for Spurs. In terms of Richarlison, I don't know how serious and how far that conversation went in terms of Palace being offered him. I don't think you see those kind of deals really anymore either. And look, you know, it's probably going to upset Richarlison a little bit as well. He's just come off the back of a very good performance against PSG, 2 goals against Burnley, one of them potentially a goal of the season contender already. So look, it's the week started well for Tottenham because Christian Romero, Tottenham's captain, new captain, has now signed a long-term contract. At the start of the summer, it looked like he was probably on the way out. So that was good news. The Burnley performance was good news. What I've seen so far under Thomas Frank has been good. But they need to bring players in because the simple fact is Spurs will not be able to compete in the Premier League on Saturdays, in the Champions League Tuesdays, the Premier League Sundays, the Champions League Wednesdays. He will not be able to compete with the current squad he's got. James Maddison's out till March, April, maybe even May. Dejan Kulusevski's probably out till December, earliest. They need to get a number 10, they need to get a left winger, and they need to get a defender. But the urgency is these 2 forward players, a 10 and a winger.
Great stuff, Michael. Thank you very much indeed. So it has been an incredible week in this summer's transfer window. Eberechi Eze was on his way to Tottenham Hotspur, and now he's on his way to their big North London rivals, Arsenal. Michael Bridge, thanks very much. And Sam Tighe, thanks for your time again. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, mate.
And thank you for listening to you guys to this special episode of the Transfer Talk podcast. We'll be back on Wednesday with a full episode as we preview the last few days of this window. It's going to get interesting.